We have a storm brewing outside, and inside we have a storm brewing as well, considering we have the new Riverside album to talk about, which is entitled Wasteland. The thunder that we hear outside can be very representative to the thunder perhaps within our souls. This is an album that certainly had the possibility, based around the singles that came before it, to be an extremely emotional ride. And of course, for fans of Riverside, it's been an emotional ride already. The death of P-Tor definitely left us all wondering where this band was going to go, if they were going to continue at all. And of course, we have since learned that they did plan to do so, and have done so. Wasteland being really the first album proper since P-Tor's death that is, really a proper full length, I suppose, with their last album being a little bit different in that regard. So what did we get? Did we get the emotional hell ride that those singles seem to predict? And the answer to that comes, of course, as we go through the album. The Day After begins this disc and starts it off with spoken word, really. I mean, it's spoken singing. We don't have nearly any sort of ambiance in the background. Instead, we're just getting a little bit of background information, and it sounds very much like a man or a woman or a person. Basically, just go with a person that is undergoing a lot of turmoil whenever it comes to a decision that they need to make and how things perhaps within a relationship have progressed. And it's very fitting and very kind of heartbreaking in a way whenever you consider and contemplate some of the lines that are being uttered throughout this very short introduction that goes then into Acid Rain. Acid Rain actually gives this a little bit of heaviness. So it's almost like speaking about how the turmoil kind of came about, or how things started to go and get so out of control. And that's something that is kind of accented a little bit more whenever you get into Veil of Tears, which is track number 3, which has kind of a Muse style vibe to it. I mean, can I say that about Riverside? I just did, so I suppose I can. I'm not dead. But that kind of is what this introduction feels like, and the overall body of the first half of this song really feels like. And then we have its transition and breakdown a little bit more into the Riverside brand of progressive rock. Now, whenever we get into Guardian Angel, this is a little bit more soft, a little bit more heartfelt. So this is kind of taking all of that semi-heaviness that we got from the very first two songs and is stripping it away in order for us to move forward within the story. And it's a pretty well done song going into Lament. Lament is massive. It is a really massive track. It is one that has, in just its 6 minutes, a lot of things going on. We get a lot of emotion that is driven here. It feels like we see a family that is just in absolute chaos, or there's a lot of questions that are surrounding a lot of things that need to be handled emotionally in order to get this kind of back. Lament is a beautiful and powerful title for this track. Going into the Struggle for Survival, which is 9 minutes and 31 seconds of mostly just music. This is mostly an instrumental. It's the longest track on the album, and good gravy. It's one that just, it goes up and down and all around. If you remember listening to maybe a single, or should I say an instrumental off of an album such as Metropolis 2 Scenes from a Memory, or maybe even listening to Stream of Consciousness or something like that, this has that feel to it. This has that feel where it is right in the middle of an album that has definitely an emotional story that's behind it, or at least is maintaining an emotional timbre, and it is able to accent that with both a little bit of loudness, a little bit of the heaviness, and then sort of retrace itself backwards. And there's definitely a struggle feel to it at times. One track that comes to mind whenever I just look at this, and then whenever I listen to parts of its Panic Attack from Dream Theater, just the way in which that song makes you feel just by title alone, and then how the music actually accents that beautifully. And the Struggle for Survival does that as well. This feels like there's a lot of conflict embedded within this song by itself, and its 9-minute runtime, I feel like it really showcases how struggles can sometimes grip us for long periods of time, and it feels everlasting. Going into River Down Below, one of the singles, we know a little bit about this. We know how this song has a very powerful guitar solo at the end, and it's very Pink Floyd-y, very dreamy, very cool, and actually it's an interesting choice directly after the Struggle for Survival, and with the title alone, it almost sounds a lot like looking from a high place with a lot on your mind, unsure whether or not you want to take the leap or not, if you know what I'm saying. And it's a song whose softness definitely reflects that sort of somberness, that sort of melancholic feeling that you get whenever something goes wrong or nothing feels like it is right there in front of you. The struggle for survival then leads to the inevitable, melancholic depression of what to do next. Moving into Wasteland, which is the second longest track on the album and the second to last song on the album. Basically, between this song and The Night Before, you put them together and you have more than 12 minutes, I would say closer to 12 and a half minutes of just heartbreaking material, and it's done very powerfully. Again, this is very much a game of accents, similar to what the struggle for survival did. So we have the accents of the heaviness that also then offset with the softer moments that tend to bleed beauty into the composition. And The Night Before does that with expertise. That Riverside is one of the few bands in the world right now pulling it off at this high of a level. They did a great job with this. This is very similar. The makeup where you have The Day After and The Night Before. It's very similar to what you got with Fear, Love, and the Time Machine with their bookend tracks. So again, they definitely seem to like this formula. It's a good way to frame an album. I like that as well. And they, again, used emotion as a real weapon on this disc in order to really suck you in. And that's the reason why this album is as good as it is. Is it as good as Love, Fear, and the Time Machine? I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. This album does have a couple of flaws. At times, this can be a little predictable, and at times it seems like Peter, being the heart and soul of this band, he's just able to craft things that, or was just able to craft things that made songs instantly memorable. Whereas with this, with Wasteland, a lot of things do commit themselves to memory, but it's more so the overall body and the overall story as aside to individual moments. If you notice and remember, we've only talked about a couple of accented moments. Instead, we've harbored a little bit more on the emotional reach, and that's what this album does. This album channels emotional reach, and based around that idea, that's what makes this album a little bit stronger than maybe how some may actually feel about just the music itself. I love how emotional this album is, and the fact that it's able to really create its own conflict by going back and forth between the heaviness and the lightness, and again, bleeding in that melancholy, bleeding in the depression, kind of slowly injecting these different ideas, as opposed to it being very, very cut and dry. As a result, this is an album that finds itself as a 24 out of 30. I was contemplating a 23, but then remembering just how wonderful The Night Before was, it's got to be a 24. Still a very good album, one that I certainly recommend to a lot of people, and if you are a progressive rock fan, you cannot live without this album right now in your life. So if you're a Riverside fan, you'll love it. If you are a prog rock fan, you'll love it. If this is your first experience with the band, know that they have a lot of other material to also canvas, so enjoy the ride. I'm coverkillernation. I want to know what you thought about this album, and also we have a CD sale that's going on. There's a link in the description box that will take you to a Google Docs page that will let you know what is still available. If you would like any of those albums available, please contact me over on the array of coverkillernation social media pages that you will see at the end of this video. Actually, you're going to see it right about now because I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.